"Fourscore and 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation, or any nation so conceived and so dedicated, can long endure."
The Great Civil War was a bloody, violent, and gory war fought between the Confederate States and the Union. While the Union was trying with all their might to abolish the vicious demon of slavery, the Confederate States, on the other hand, fought for their right to keep slavery legal. But there was one thing in this brutal war that changed it all: communication. The telegraph, a brand new invention at the time, allowed the Union to take the upper hand on the battlefield. Though a small machine, the telegraph had the capacity to send signals across the northern U.S. in minutes through wired poles. On April 12, 1861, a war that changed the course of American history forever began. This was the Civil War, and the idea of Abraham Lincoln to embrace the telegraph was very important during the Civil War. This is because the telegraph helped communicate in a fast, easy, efficient way to troops all over the Union. The Civil War was the first war using powerful machinery, thanks to the new technologies that were being developed. The Union was far more interconnected than the opposing side because of the telegraph. Though it was not instantaneous, it was the fastest way during the time. The cause of the Civil War can be traced back to numerous different reasons, from economic to social differences.
So what caused the Civil War? Somebody said slavery. Can I hear a states' rights? Can I hear a conflicting civilizations? Can I hear unctuous fury? Can I hear fanaticism? Can I hear fear? Can I hear stupidity?
On November 6, 1860, Abraham Lincoln was declared president. Less than a month later, South Carolina seceded from the Union, an act that had threatened to commit for months. On January 6th, other states receded and created the Confederate States of America. On February 18, 1861, they declared their first president, Jefferson Davis. The Union had numerous advantages over the Confederacy. The Union had 23 states, while the Confederacy had only 11. The Union also had 19 million people. On the other hand, the Confederacy had 9 million, counting slaves, which means the Union had 2 times as much manpower. The Union also had a functioning government, army, and a naval force, while the Confederacy was just a newly developed country. The Confederate States could have used their very long coastline of 3,500 miles, which could have been a great vantage point for the Confederacy in the Civil War. However, they did not take advantage of this aspect to try to overpower the Union.
The economy of these two rivals was very different. The Confederacy was mainly based on agriculture, especially cotton. And the most important reason the Confederacy wanted to keep slavery legal is because their whole economy was based on slavery. This is because slaves used to do all the work of their owners, like picking cotton. So people in the Confederacy were scared that if slavery was outlawed, then there would be no one to pick cotton or work on the farms, which would destroy their economy.
Slavery was extremely profitable. The Southern economy, thank you very much, was booming. South had its greatest cotton crop ever in 1860.
The Union's economy was based on industry and manufacturing. From these iron factories, they had more transportation through railroads, which was also a great advantage for the Union. The Union's economy did not rely on farming and agriculture, so they did not need slaves to do their work. So after the Civil War, the Union's economy would not be affected greatly. However, the South's economy would be left destroyed. The war was starting its first phase when the Confederate States wanted Anderson and his men at Fort Sumter in Charleston, South Carolina to surrender. However, they refused. On April 12th, a cannon was shot from Fort Johnson declaring war. Anderson and his men fought for more than 9 hours, but there were too many Confederates and their ammunition had depleted. On April 14th, Anderson used the telegraph to surrender, and he and his men proceeded to New York on a Union supply ship, giving up Fort Sumter.
At 4:30 a.m. on April 12th, a shot fired from Fort Johnson on James Island burst over Fort Sumter and signaled the Confederate batteries in Charleston Harbor to commence an assault on the fort. The Civil War had begun. At daybreak, Union forces opened fire in response. Charlestonians watched as the bombardment of the fort continued for 34 hours.
This was just one battle out of the many devastating battles to come. On July 21st, 1861, the First Battle of Bull Run marked the first major land battle of the Civil War. This battle resulted in the Confederate victory, which left 3,000 men dead on the Union side and about 1,750 casualties on the Confederate side. The Confederacy secured this victory in Bull Run because General P.G.T. Beauregard, a Confederate general, got his hands on the Union's battle plan and used the telegraph to inform his army, while the Union, on the other hand, did not take the advantage of the telegraph during this battle, which led to their loss. After this battle, Abraham Lincoln learned to use the telegraph to communicate to his men, and he realized how important it would be to decide the fate of this war.
During one instance in September 1862, the telegraph proved to be greatly effective. This is because a general named George B. McClellan used the telegraph to resupply his troops with bullets and shells during the Battle of Antietam in Maryland. Another battle where the telegraph was used in a decisive way was the 1862 Battle of Second Manassas. As the Confederate Army destroyed the Union men on the grounds near Manassas, Virginia, the Union colonel and Abraham Lincoln communicated back and forth through the telegraph. During this battle, Lincoln was fully engaged with what was happening and with the messages that were being sent to him over the telegraph.
About a year later, in July of 1863, President Lincoln used the telegraph during the Battle of Gettysburg. Lincoln used the telegraph to tell General Joseph Hooker not to go south of the Rappahannock River because the Confederates were moving north of the river. The telegraph proved to be such a great military advantage for the Union. Although the Confederate States also used the telegraph, the Union took full advantage. For example, the Union had thousands of miles of telegraph wires all over the northern states. Meanwhile, the Confederacy did not have nearly as many miles of telegraph wires, and it was not widely used. All of these examples show that communication using the telegraph was much more efficient than letters and horseback. There is no doubt that the telegraph decided the fate of the United States during the Civil War. Historians attest that the Civil War is the war that shaped America, the war that freed thousands of people of color. Overall, the telegraph proved to be a major military advantage for the Union, which helped to send information to troops all over the North. Abraham Lincoln had an outstanding way to communicate that no other politician or leader in history had ever possessed. Throughout history, political leaders and military leaders always had to be with their armies, or they had to send messages on horseback, which would take days or even weeks and months, which would not have been efficient when there are troops that you would have to communicate with all over the Union. This device gave Lincoln power over all the men that fought in this bloody war. Overall, the telegraph let troops react very quickly to changing conditions and helped free millions of people.
That this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth.